Hello, good evening, and welcome to Business Focus, live here on TV3. Business Focus is your weekly business and economic analysis program. My name is Pakus Yasari, and thanks very much for joining us for another week of business and economic discussions. Well, so what are we looking at today? You know, domestic revenue mobilization has always been a big challenge for us as a country. The reason why we've had to look elsewhere for financing to support our budget. Now, the Ghana Revenue Authority has set a target of 39 billion Ghana cedis for the year 2018, which it intends to meet on a quarterly basis. Now, in 2017, the authority met 96.26% of this set target. We'll be delving deeper into the subject to find out exactly what the GRA must have done to have, met this performance. It says is the best in the last 5 years. Also, the debate over whether or not Uber riders should pay taxes has come up for major discussion again after a ruling in Australia that riders should pay taxes. There's been a lot of back and forth here in Ghana. The Ghana Private Roads Transport Union and Uber drivers, have been at each other. There was a meeting today. We'll be seeking to speak to a member of the Ghana Private Road Transport Union to find out what conclusion was reached on this matter. Later on in the program, we'll be doing some analysis on the stock market as well as the commodities market. We'll find out what the price of gold, cocoa and oil is and how it's likely to impact on the local economy. My name is Pakus Yasari. Thanks very much for joining us. This is Business Focus. For the next 50 minutes, we'll be doing some business and economic analysis. Let's now go for some business news making headlines. All right, so you're welcome back to Business Focus, live here on TV3, your weekly business and economic analysis program. I should be speaking to a tax analyst later on in the program. But let's start off with the issue on the Ghana Revenue Authority having set a target of 39 billion cedis for the year 2018, which it intends to meet on a quarterly basis. Now, in 2017, the authority met 96.2% of its set target. This, according to the Commissioner General, Kofi Nti, is the best performance of the authority in the last 5 years.
Last year, 2017, we ended up with 32.4 million, as against a target of about 33.6 million. And so we're about 96.6 million on the target. Okay. And it was a very hard time. We worked hard. And then the growth in percentage relative to 2016 appeared to be the best in the last 5 years.
The Commissioner General further explained the new strategies of tax collection in 2018.
The target's about 39 billion. And on that 39 billion, we've set our targets to make sure this time around we wouldn't wait till the Ghanaian balance the last minute, but that we are going to fight to meet the target on a quarterly basis. So the first quarter target is what we will be focusing on in the first quarter. When we cross the bridge, then we focus on the second quarter. We are putting in a lot of measures to ensure that we are able to advance our revenue collection for the state.
He was speaking on the sidelines of his send-off party for 138 retired non-management staff of the Ghana Revenue Authority. He congratulated the outgoing non-management for their performance and service. Long-serving staff were rewarded duly for their hard work and commitment to the cause of revenue collection in the country. Others were also presented with citations. After 39 years of service, Samuel Atram, a retiree, shared some of his experience.
My major challenges is how they change the tax laws. Because the tax laws, if it is one, everybody who is coming from our assistants will learn the same thing. But years go on, they normally change the tax laws.
All right, so that was the Commissioner General of the Ghana Revenue Authority, Kofi Nti. Let me come back in studio and introduce to you my guest. Edinam Nyatepe is a research analyst with First Bank Financial Services. Edinam, good to have you in studio. And Justice Edu, also a research analyst with First Bank Financial Services. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me in studio. Let me hop onto the phone lines now and also speak to a tax expert, Ni Aite. Ms. Aite, thank you very much for your time. I started off by saying that, domestic revenue mobilization remains a major challenge for our country, Ghana. Yes. It's a pretty much tough question to ask, but are we ever going to have a situation where revenue will equal expenditure, let alone talk of a budget surplus?
Thank you very much, and good evening to your listeners and viewers, I guess. Whether Ghana will ever reach a time when our revenue will equal expenditure, not only Ghana, perhaps all countries, would we ever get to that situation? I don't really control expenditure. I don't think we would ever have a situation where the two will be equal. I don't think so. But whatever it is, it's important that in terms of revenue, we are moderate in our expenditure, taking into account how much revenues we expect to generate. Of course, if we will go beyond our own revenue generation to look elsewhere, we should still be put in measure to ensure that we are able to meet the long-term expenditure needs. But whether we reach a point when expenditure will be equal to revenue or vice versa, I'm not too sure I have the capacity to kind of give that kind of forecast.
I know it's a difficult one. So I have the Commissioner General of the GRA pretty much excited, suggesting that they witnessed a very best performance in 5 years. In the last 5 years, they managed to achieve 96.26% of the set target for 2017. In terms of real numbers, 32.4 billion cedis, as against a target of 33.6 million cedis. Is that anything to be excited about?
Well, like your producers told me, I'm not in the position to have figures to compare. But I guess the Commissioner General will be referring to actuals. I mean, revenue forecast against the actuals. I believe he has the figures. This that is made, a forecast that is made, or a revenue estimate is always a forecast. And revenue efforts are made towards attaining that one. And what must always be done is once forecasts are made, the strategies are put in place to be able to meet those targets. And if there should be some kind of unforeseen development, then new measures are made to kind of address those developments in order to meet the targets that are set. I know that GRA will set targets, or targets are set after a very lengthy, elaborate process of revenue forecasting generally, looking at trends, looking at laws, looking at what they call discretionary changes, etc. By the end of the day, when the forecasts are made, it's a guide towards what must be done the previous years. I believe in terms of collections over previous years, it will be positive. Now, whether the collection year match against the target set for this, collection last year, match against the target for last year, equal at, I wouldn't know the changes that there were. But it's important that for us all to understand that revenue forecasts are forecast as it is. And what is important will be the measure that we put in place towards meeting those revenue forecasts or targets that are set.
And are you impressed as a tax expert by some of the measures being put in place by the GRA in terms of tax collections? Last year, we saw a number of stringent measures being put up. Offices were locked, offices including Vodafone, for instance, were locked. Are you impressed by such actions?
Well, I'll say mixed. My reaction will be mixed in the sense that those ones you are referring to were only what was obvious. The big, I believe, defaulters in terms of debt, those who owe tax debt, and the measures that were taken to kind of go after them. And with all the publicity like you are referring to, it's sort of to send some message out to all others. My take would be that it should rather be a continuous process so that close monitoring and then carrying out the issues on an everyday basis so that we don't always get to the point where we have to use such drastic measures to kind of collect the taxes. It becomes important sometimes when taxpayers, after several outreach to them to pay, etc., still default. Then these things come in. But it is equally important to have a continuous and a regular system of monitoring and collecting taxes so that we do what we can to minimize taxes accumulating to become those huge debts that we need all this publicity to collect. So like I said, when it comes to that is, it comes to the end, yes, GRA has the power to use those measures, and I think it's okay to use them. But I would look more as the everyday and regular monitoring and revenue collection, therefore, that will prevent us getting to that point.
So you would encourage more of tax compliance. But my very final question to you.
That's right.
My very final question to you, sir, is what the government intends to do this year. It set a target of 39 billion cedis to attain. But interestingly, the Commissioner General says they're going to target it on a quarterly basis. They've set targets on a quarterly basis, which they intend to, meet. Is this a prudent way?
Okay, I listened in part to what the Commissioner General was saying. But then targets are set annually, and in all previous, and I believe going forward, the targets are broken down into quarters. That is what you expect to earn, to collect within the first, second, and third quarter. Sometimes broken down into months. And these all follow trends in the past and other parameters that are used. What I believe he is saying, that my take, which I think will be good, is that it is an issue that they will make every effort to ensure that the targets are met as the quarters go by. Sometimes it is possible that there are significant deviations, negatively, of course, in various quarters. And there's always the hope that as the last quarter of the year ends, a lot of efforts will be put in place to kind of recoup what hadn't been collected. I see his interjection as being putting out measures to ensure that they are not going to wait to last minute. But like I said earlier, they would on a regular basis ensure that their strategies work so that the targets are met on the quarterly basis, whatever they will do, so that not everything is pushed to the very last end of the year. If that is the approach, I think it is good. And then we will not reach a situation where the end of the year we all get bogged down with only revenue, debt recovery. We will have a continual, a smooth flow of revenue within the year. I think it's a useful strategy.
All right, I think it's a useful strategy. That's how you concluded. Thank you very much. Nii Ayite, a tax expert, joining us on the phone lines. Let me come back in studio. Let me start off with Justice. Justice, what's your take on this?
So I'll start by saying it's interesting the way the discussion has gone to this point. And it's very difficult to look at revenue performance in isolation. It's prudent to link it to the entire fiscal situation of the country. And as a country, we've tried as much as we can to reduce the fiscal deficit. And we can tell that in 2017, revenue expenditure imbalance has been relatively minimal compared to previous years. And you realize that previous years we've been overrunning the budget, and it's got to a point where as a country we must decide to more or less spend within our means. And so the figures you mentioned, I believe, are non-oil revenue figures. But again, I can't discount the impact of oil because most of government programs are tied to oil revenue. If you add oil revenue also to what you have there, it points to a little about 90% in terms of government target versus actual. And what that means is the government has done, or the GRA has done extremely well to mobilize revenue for 2017. And if you look at the numbers closely, you can tell where the increase is coming from. It's mainly from income and property tax. And as you mentioned, during the year we saw some form of aggression on the part of the GRA to ensure that at least for once they ramp up in terms of revenue mobilization. They are actively out there. I've seen quite a number of publications in the print media encouraging people to pay their taxes and all that. But that's just one aspect of it. You're not going to get Ghanaians to voluntarily decide to pay taxes. We need to have an effective system in place. And I'm sure in 2018, we will see some of the systems being put in place. I'm sure as we go on the show, we'll talk about the plans for 2018. But I think 2017 generally was a good year, and it's reflective in the fiscal deficit we are expected to report by year-end 2017, which is lower than what we saw in 2016.
I think it's exciting news to hear that we're making some strides when it comes to revenue mobilization and collection. But I guess it also brings us to the same old discussion about widening the tax net and robbing a lot more people. You think that this particular Commissioner General is focused on this?
Yes. What we have now is the informal sector constitutes about 86% of the entire population. So having only 14% of the population pay taxes has put the tax burden on very few people. So widening the tax net is the way to go to rob in the 86% that have been left out. In the 2018 budget that was read, we realized that government wants to implement the physical electronic device, which will be implemented to shops so that they do not just have to estimate what their revenues are, but then the Ghana Revenue Authority can actually track what their revenues are. We are yet to see the implementation of the National Identification Address System, where we would have the physical addresses embossed on buildings, which would ensure that there's effective collection of property tax. And property tax is one of our major revenue
sources.
Yes, sources. So these are very good policies that are going to be implemented to widen the tax net. So it's a step in the right direction. And it's possible government would meet their end-year targets by implementing such policies.
Justice, the issue about 2018 and the fact that they intend to meet this target on a quarterly basis, is that something you think is achievable?
It's a good thing. I mean, if you are trying to...
So you don't have to scramble in the dying embers of the year.
You know the points where you are lagging behind. For example, if you projected you raise X amount in terms of property tax, and let's say first quarter is coming to an end, and you've done less than half, you know exactly what to do. And if you have limited resources, you know the areas you have to focus your limited resources on. So I think it's even good for the kind of structure they have there, because we know most of these government institutions don't have all the resources they have to work. So if you're able to break your targets down on a quarter by quarter basis, and you know, let's say the low hanging fruits, you know revenue sources that you can easily focus on, when your target, when the quarter is coming to an end and realize that you're not performing, you can at least focus the resources you have to get revenue in from areas where you know you'll not struggle. I mean, we know with the informal sector, it's been a struggle for a long time. But even with that, we expect to see some change in 2018. As Edna mentioned, there are some policies in place that should rope in the informal sector. The key one has to do with the national identification system. And we all know what the benefits will be. I mean, if there's a database that has all our details, we know the work you do, we know where to find you. We can easily find a way of getting you to even self-report if you have a right system in place. And I mentioned earlier that it's good to have all these policies in place, but the key thing is implementation and the speed with which you implement, which brings the whole quarterly thing into perspective. For example, if you read the budget last year, the finance minister mentioned that by January this year, we should see a policy on the tax stamp policy being implemented, where when you buy a commodity, you see some stamps on it, which should show that one is certified and which should bring some revenue to the GRA. I've not seen it being rolled out yet. It means that we've done two weeks in the month of January, and we've not seen something that should be bringing in revenue. So if, let's say, it continues till end of month, which means 1 month of the quarter has gone, and GRA has already budgeted a certain amount from this particular tax stream, and they've not, they can clearly see what they need to do to ensure that by the end of first quarter, whatever they've targeted for, they should be able to reach that target.
Right. I also big thank you to Justice, who's a research analyst with First Bank Financial Services, and Edinam Nyatepe, who's also a research analyst. We're going to take a short break, and we'll return to do some more analysis. They would return to do some analysis on the stock market as well as the commodities market. We'll also look at the forex market. That's a major discussion. There appears to be some pressure on the forex market. You look at the cedi and the dollar situation. There's a lot of apprehension from importers and exporters as well. I mean, both, particularly from importers. The cedi against the dollar, it's not faring quite well. We'll find out what is accounting for this. You know, the whole of 2017, we saw some relative stability with regards to the performance of the cedi, but why are we having this situation? It appears to be a seasonal one. We'll take a short break, return and do the analysis. All right, you're welcome back to Business Focus, your weekly business and economic analysis program, live here on TV3. Pardon me. So our next subject has to do with a debate over whether or not Uber drivers should pay taxes. And this has come up for discussion again after a ruling in Australia that riders should pay taxes. Back here in Ghana, there have been broad discussions and implications for Uber drivers who now need to register for goods and services tax. And if left unchallenged, will give the tax office in Australia much greater insight into the company's tax practice. Well, this has got to do with what's happening in Australia. I've got in the studio with me Eto Namsey. She's head of business at 3FM to help us. She's been on this beat, following up on discussions between the GPRTU and Uber. But we'll take the short story and then we'll come back to do further analysis on the subject.
More than 50,000 Uber drivers in Australia who use the service to make extra cash, ferrying passengers around, will now be required to pay taxes to the government after they lost a battle to the taxation office inside Australia. This has also been replicated in some other European countries. Now we are asking, should Uber drivers or riders pay taxes to government?
Okay, I think the drivers shouldn't pay tax. I think Uber should pay tax because technically they work for Uber, in as much as the drivers get a percentage of the final amount. Uber does get a percentage. So if the public drivers pay directly to government, then Uber should be held responsible for tax that their drivers incur.
An argument on tax payment has been raised by some local taxi operators close to a year. Some commercial taxi drivers in Accra have raised issues of illegality in the operations of Uber, a ride-sharing network company which has been operating within the Accra and Kumasi metropolis for the past year. The Umbrella Commercial Taxi Drivers Association Ghana in September questioned the use of private cars by Uber drivers.
We can be here the whole day and we can get about, let's say, 100 Ghana or something, which is not good at all. You, the government, you are benefit out of the revenue. If the taxi drivers are paying the revenue and the others are not paying, it's not good for us.
The Umbrella Commercial Taxi Drivers Association Ghana in September this year questioned the use of private cars by Uber drivers for commercial purposes. The commercial drivers say the action of Uber drivers is in breach of the Road Traffic Act, LI 2012, Regulation 141 1B 2180.
We go for roadworthy, they are also going for the income tax, which is the VIT. They don't go for a commercial licenses. I'm not sure they are using them. And when it comes to the AMS stickers and everything, they are not using any those things, which I think perhaps government need to come in. We are paying taxes to them, which I'm not sure probably they are paying to the government.
The drivers have consequently petitioned the Ministry of Transport against the use of private cars for commercial purposes. The Transport Ministry is yet to react to matters surrounding Uber company. A visit to Uber's website shows partners who drive or act as couriers on the Uber platform are classified as independent contractors. As an independent contractor, taxes are not withheld by the federal or state government. This means that it is your responsibility to file taxes at the end of each year. According to the Ghana Revenue Authority, Uber as a company has paid up its taxes. Uber lost a court challenge against the Australian Taxation Office that will force drivers to be registered to pay goods and services tax. Justice John Griffiths, who sat on the matter, found that Uber could be designated as a taxi service with its software and service offered. So we ask, are Ghanaian Uber drivers likely to pay independent taxes to government soon?
All right, so, lots of issue coming out of the operations of Uber as a company. I'm sure you heard that report. Eto Namse, head of business at 3FM, joins me. Eto, so what's this whole, discussion on Uber?
So, there are concerns that, like you said earlier on, as a corporate organization, MG, we pay taxes, but as individuals, we also pay taxes. And so the concern is that, Uber, you don't necessarily have to brand your vehicle. You can use your private car. And so it is up to government to tax those individuals who use their private vehicles for Uber services. So I think that is a concern of GPRTU. They are calling for Uber to ensure that every vehicle that is used is branded as taxi, and so that you will pay your tax. Because when you have to go and register, and when you're doing your vehicle registration and all that, so that government will identify you and tax you. That should be the job of government, not individual or not Uber. I don't know if you get what I mean. So when we spoke to Uber, the concern is that they pay taxes. They are operating as a corporate organization. They pay taxes in Ghana. So they're looking at government finding a way to tax the individuals who are using their private vehicles to offer the services that they offer. And we also spoke to them about the fact that there was a ruling or there was a directive from government to have them brand their vehicles within a month, or they will take an action on them.
Brand their vehicles as what?
As taxis, as we have here in Ghana.
But that doesn't happen elsewhere in other countries.
But that is not their mode of operation.
That is not the operation of
the operation Uber is that you can use your private. I can use my car to pick people and say I'm off. Yes, right. And so that is the argument with GPRT.
Have you tried to speak to Uber on this matter?
Yes, we spoke to Uber. They will not officially give you an interview until they get to their bosses outside Ghana. And so we sent them an email, and they said they haven't been given any directive to brand their vehicles. However, as a corporate organization, Uber, they pay taxes. And so they are hoping that government will find a way, like I said earlier on, to tax the individuals who use their vehicles for such services.
I was hoping that I would have spoken to a member of the Ghana Private Road Transport Union. Indeed, we had established earlier contacts with them. They had agreed to speak to us on the program, but unfortunately, we were unable to reach them on the phone lines. But Eto, could this also be due to a certain rivalry between Uber and these, members of the Ghana Private Road Transport? They feel that, Uber riders are making more money than them, or becoming a preferred source.
Uber riders are making more money, and this is how they use an app. So they don't just charge you from their head like our traditional taxi drivers do here. They use an app, and so when you pick them, if you've employed the services of Uber before, when you sit in the vehicle, you get to your destination and they're able to tell you how much, because they use the distance to charge. So, but here, the traditional taxi driver doesn't do that. And so people tend to use Uber services more than the traditional taxi. Right. And well, we spoke to the General Secretary, Isa Khalifa, who was supposed to have spoken to us on the show this evening. We asked them, do you feel threatened in any way by the services of Uber? They said no. We want competition. However, we want a fair competition. What do you mean by a fair competition?
Absolutely. That's the next question I was going to ask. What do they mean by unfair competition?
And they feel that government is not. They again go to the taxing bit. That government must find a way to tax the individuals who use their private taxis to do Uber services. They are not paying the taxes, they are paying. You know, so basically that is the argument.
You know, I once put up this post that, you know, Facebook has the largest content, but the content Facebook has is user generated.
Right.
It is not by Facebook. It's the same as Uber. You know, Uber is a transport company, one of the largest transport companies, but it doesn't own its own vehicles.
Absolutely.
So if they're asking Uber riders to brand their vehicles, they're suggesting that private people should brand their cars into taxis.
If I have a private vehicle and there's a service called Uber, it says that you can use your car to do business. When I close from work, I can use my car to do private business. I don't see why I shouldn't take that opportunity. So this is the era of competition. So you should find an innovative way of making money instead of.
I'm hoping that we'll get to speak to this individual stakeholders, a GPRTU and Uber on this matter. But I know you've also been following up on one issue which has to do with transport fares.
Right.
What's occasioning this discussion?
So today, the GPRTU met with the transport minister. They were supposed to deliberate on whether or not to increase transport fares and by what margin, because their concerns are that prices of spare parts have gone up, and they also have concerns about the fact that fuel prices have gone up.
World market.
Don't forget that crude is selling at $69 a barrel. Some analysts are predicting for it will hit $70 a barrel by the end of this month. And so if price of crude are up, we are a net importer of crude. That's good news for us, but we also import. And so you would want to see that this will affect prices of fuel products, petroleum products. And don't forget that the next pricing window starts today. And already IAS is saying that prices will increase by between 3 and 5% effective tomorrow. And so it would automatically have some effects on transport fares.
I don't know if you've had any audience with the Chamber of Petroleum Consumers. What are they saying about this?
So what they're saying is that if you look at the price of crude, like I said earlier on, it is automatic. Even though the MPA...
Because of the deregulation policy we're running?
Even under the deregulation policy we're running. Don't forget, the MPA sent a circular around on January 1 and said that no OMC should increase price of fuel. But you cannot determine the price of fuel under a deregulated market.
Right.
You do not do that because you do not control the price anymore. For instance, if the price of crude is hitting $70 a barrel, it is having an effect on me as an importer. You don't expect me to still keep my price. I will by all means increase the price of my petroleum products. And so MPA has sent a circular around, but I think because they said they are instituting what they call the price stabilization levy, and they hope that that will absorb the margin of the increase in petroleum.
Okay, so I know you've got your eyes and your ears on the ground.
Right.
What should we expect?
So we should expect tomorrow increase in prices of fuel between 3 and 5%. And then this week, the GPRTU says there will be increase in transport fares. We are not sure the margin, but when I spoke to Khalifa, he said they want to know how much, by what margin the fuel prices will increase, and then we determine by what percentage will increase the prices of transport fares.
Etonam, thank you very much. Etonam is the news editor for Business 3FM, and today's her birthday. Happy birthday, Etonam.
Thank you, Parker.
And wish you all the best on your birthday.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll take a short break. When we return, we'll do that discussion on the stock market. We'll find out also the issue about the local currency and how it appears to be sliding against its major trading currencies. All that and more coming up shortly. All right, so we're in the dying embers of the program. This is Business Focus, your weekly business and economic analysis program live here on TV3. My name is Pakwisi Asare. My guest in studio, Justice Edu, is a research analyst with First Bank Financial Services, and Edinam Nyatefe, also a research analyst with First Bank Financial Services. They're back with me. Edinam, let me start off with you on the issue of the Forex. What is happening?
Okay, so what we are seeing now currently is we've seen the dollar weakening against the major trading currencies, and this on
the dollar
back,
weakening.
Yes.
Okay.
Against the major trading currencies, and this has been on the back of weakening expectation of interest rate hikes in the U.S.
Okay.
The initial expectation last year was to see hikes in interest rates, and that's what we expected to pressure the cedi. But this year, it looks like there's some disunity between the Fed and the central bank. After the last meeting, they stated there were mixed opinions. A part of the central bank was not in agreement with the hikes because they felt that it would have inflationary pressures. So that has weakened the dollar against major trading currencies. On the back of this, we've seen very marginal depreciation against, like between the cedi and the dollar. The year to date, the depreciation rate is only negative, is only 0.09%. Yes, so at the moment, the pressure is very minimal, but we still need to keep our eyes on the rate. So developments in the U.S. markets are likely to have an impact on...
Earlier today, I had concerns from some importers about, the cedi.
Exactly. During this time of the year, you find most importers who brought in goods for the Christmas season demanding Forex to pay back their creditors. And we tend to do a lot of business with China. And I hear their financial year closes around this time of the year. So they will also be more or less, they'll be on the phone calling people who have bought stuff from them.
So there's very high demand for the dollar.
So during this time of the year, if you look at the historical data, there's some form of pressure on the cedi. So between January and March, because of the issues I've explained earlier, you tend to see real demand for the dollar.
It's a seasonal.
So it's a seasonal thing, exactly. And we should. That's why I think we should keep a close eye on the situation. It's likely it might be an issue as we move on to February and into March. The good thing, as we've always pointed out, is that if you look at the reserves the central bank has built up, they appear to be in a comfortable position to be able to more or less step in and ensure that we don't have shortage of Forex. But I don't think we are there yet. We should just allow more or less the cedi to play out against the other trading currencies. If there is a need for, let's say, the central bank to auction some dollars, I think they'll be in a position to do so.
Edinam, this is not a new subject. It's come up time and again about the performance of the cedi, and we always say that, look, we are not... we are always importing goods, and that's essentially why there's so much demand for the dollar, and it's always putting pressure. Has it got to do with any sterling management of the economy, or it's just a seasonal thing and let's forget about it? It would always happen.
It's a seasonal thing, and usually the risk we have is at the external risk. But right now, that has been dampened because we are not expecting to see the rate hikes. So we have to keep an eye on to the demand. So it's the demand for the dollar that might push this off board. But externally, it looks like things have calmed down on the U.S. side.
I see. Let's talk about the... Okay, so I'm moving away from the exchange rate. Let's talk about the commodities market.
Okay, so for the commodities market, for Brent in particular, it closed today at $69.64 per barrel, and the reason has been strong demand from refineries. So that's the major driver of the momentum we've seen in crude prices, and also the cuts from the OPEC countries is also has dampened supply. That's what's happening currently, and it looks like the OPEC countries are very committed to the cuts, the agreements they've made on the cuts of crude supply. Yeah, so those are pushing the prices of crude up. And we have seen increase in production from the U.S. and Canada, but those have not been enough to cover the demand pressure. Yeah, so we still expect to see some marginal rises in crude prices until the U.S. is able to...
So there's still shale oil production from the U.S.?
Yes, still, yes. And they are even increasing production because now the prices are very attractive. And the risk now here is they might even take over the market share, which might even put some pressure on the OPEC countries to look at their strategy.
What would all this mean for countries like Ghana?
So for countries like Ghana, at the moment, we're enjoying the high prices, and we do not have cuts. We're supplying as much as we are producing, so we are enjoying it. So
but of
the
course, because
risk,
of the deregulation, we're
yes.
likely to pay as the prices go up. Right. Justice?
Yeah, that's true. So on the one hand, we are benefiting because gradually we are becoming net exporters of crude.
Right.
And what that means is that previously, instead of, let's say, doling out a certain amount of money to import crude, because now most of our thermal plants run on gas, and gas is cheap, and we have a lot of gas reserves in Ghana, we are more or less making some savings there. And as you rightly pointed out, even though we are enjoying on the one hand, because we are getting a lot of revenue because prices are high, on the flip side, we are having to pay more realistically for the price of finished products that we get from crude oil, and
which is likely to cause a lot of agitation, from the general public.
Exactly.
We'll see how the politicians deal with that. So, how about the stock market? Tell me about investments. What's going on?
All right. So on the stock market, we've seen the momentum that saw of 2017 continue in the first trading sessions of 2018. As the case has been in previous years, financial stocks tend to drive the market, and that's exactly what you are seeing. Stocks like Ghana Commercial Bank, EcoBank, for this past week, ETI, SG, especially the first day I mentioned, StanChart, ETI, EcoBank, they are large cap stocks, so their movements tend to dictate the direction the market also heads. StanChart is also another stock, a financial stock that's performed well last year, and this year they are showing signs of strong performance as well. Generally, we saw a good performance on the market last year. The issue now is that because the market did very well last year, most of the companies that are fundamentally strong are trading at very high PEs. It means that if you are an astute investor, you may not want to buy shares now because you think you are paying more than the value you'll be getting for them. But again, if you look at the fact that the banks are trying to clean their books and we expect them to post better results in 2017 full year, manufacturing sector is doing well. I mean, energy crisis has been resolved. There's generally a stable macroeconomic environment. So across the board, we expect most of the companies to post very strong results, and that should increase investors' return in terms of what they expect to get on their investment. So even though currently we are seeing the companies trading at record highs in terms of PE levels, if the results come in and investors feel like there's still some form of potential in terms of the intrinsic value of the firms, we can still see a certain kind of momentum that currently we are seeing. Currently, if you look at the momentum we are seeing, it's at record levels. It means that the activity and the kind of price gains we are seeing is matching what we've seen in the past. So the question is, are we going to remain stable, or are we going to see even further momentum? And as I said, it will only be dependent on the kind of results we will see from the companies. And from what we've gathered, the companies generally should post very positive results.
Edinam, I'm going to end with you. I know you've said that we should keep an eye on the cedi dollar situation, but as an analyst, are you able to make any projections maybe for the next 2 months? We've seen the cedi, it's remained relatively stable the whole of 2017. We've not had that kind of slide that we used to experience in previous years. Looking at what's happening right now, are we able to make any projections?
Yes.
In the first quarter?
Yeah. So in the first quarter, I don't expect to see any hikes in the exchange rate. I expect us to see some stability like we saw last year.
So importers can be rest assured?
Yes.
All right. Okay, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Justice Edu is a research analyst with First Bank Financial Services. Edinam Nyatape is also a research analyst with First Bank Financial Services. Early on, we spoke to Ni Ayi Ayite. He's a tax expert. He also joined us on the phone lines. Thank you very much for your time and for joining us here on Business Focus, your weekly business and economic analysis program. Thanks for watching. My name is Sparkus Yasari. Stand by for News 360.